And welcome to my lecture on how to make some CGI looking textures. These textures, texture maps, whatever you want to call them, I'll probably be referring to them as textures from here on out. Um, that's the difference between what I'm doing here, CGI, computer generated images versus realistic images, is they're not going to look exactly real. Um, if you want complete and total realism, grab yourself a camera and go out and take a picture of whatever it is you're trying to make, and then bring it into Photoshop and alter it to make a texture map. And I'm going to be doing that later on as well. I just got to make sure I get a really good camera from the office. I just got to check one out, and then I'll get those videos to you as soon as possible. All right. So, anywho, I'm going to start off with something incredibly simple, just a cloth texture. What I'm going for now are the kind of what I call, I believe the syllabus calls them archaic textures, and in my own work that refers to, at least as far as I go, anything that is pre-industrial. So that goes back from like ancient times, Stone Age, Bronze Age, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, um, the Roman era, Middle Ages, on up to around the 1700s. Pretty much, right around up to the American Revolution and about 50 years after that. So, anything before machinery. Blah, 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 blah. It's not a history class. Come on, Tim. Let's move on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create some cloth. And, of course, cloth fabric that exists pretty much very, from earlier on, as far back as history goes. And obviously exists today. So you can use this with any genre. And what I'm going to do is, this is incredibly simple. We'll be done here in like 5 minutes. I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to make me some clouds. And I love me some clouds. And I don't know why I did that. Let me just show you again. Filter, render, clouds. This is just a great way to get some content into a layer, to get something happening instead of a solid color. It's pretty much the start of like half the textures out there, because you got to have something to mess with. So we've got that, but the problem is we've got obvious areas where it's very dark and where it's very light. Now, in fabric, it's usually a solid color unless it's a print or a plaid, or a paisley. Anyhow, we're going to go with a solid color for right now. So what we're going to do is we need a solid color, and here we've got too many different values. Value being the artistic word for how light or how dark it is. We've got a very dark value over here. We've got very light values over here, and that's not going to work for a single value color. So what we're going to do is we're going to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast. And because I am old and I don't feel like learning the new way, I'm going to use the legacy method of doing it. And I'm going to set our contrast at about 80, negative 80, maybe even negative 85. Let's go with 87 because that's what I got. I'm going to go with it because I'm lazy. Boom, there it is. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go up to Filter Gallery here. And no, we're not going to use mosaic tiles. We could use several different things here. We could use grain. That's kind of a favorite of mine. We could use texturizer. Texturizer gives us a very, very fine weave. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So there is a very fine weave, but you still see a remnants of those different values. So before I do that, I'm going to go back and lower the contrast even more like I should have in the first place. Now apply that filter, And there is a very, very fine weave cloth. I'm going to duplicate that layer because I forgot a step. And then I'm going to add another layer here that's going to be the color. And you just pick out any color you want. Let's just go with a turquoise, kind of a turquoise blue. I'm going to fill that in. I'm just going to set that to multiply. And boom, there's your turquoise blue. And you can go to image adjustments, hue, saturation, and value, and you can control the color. You can make it green, you can make it very green, you can make it dark blue, you can make it red, you can make it any bright red, you can make it dull red, anything in between just by messing with hue, saturation, and value. So you save that, and that is one way to do it. Now what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to set it to normal. And actually, no, I'm going to I need to get my filters back to clouds again. So filter, render clouds, because this is the other way. And see how I did that accidentally without resetting my background color to black and white. So let me redo that filter again. And again, image adjustments, brightness, contrast. This time, actually bring it down all the way like I was supposed to, like a good little boy. Down to like 95, negative 95, and hit OK. Now, let's see here. Again, this is the second technique, so this isn't. If you're going to use the first technique, you don't need to do this. But if you like what I'm about to show you, then you can skip the first steps. Okay, so now we're going to go to Filter Gallery again. This time we're going to use grain, but we're going to use grain type vertical. Then we're going to create another layer. And we're going to go to Filter, Render, Clouds, and again, bring the brightness, the contrast down to next to nothing. And go to Filter Gallery again. This time set it to horizontal and hit OK. And hit our, go to multiply. And there you have a much coarser weave where you can actually see the individual threads. So that's two different ways to do cloth. It is gorgeous and delicious. I'm just going to go ahead and combine those. And I'm going to bring my color up here again and make this one multiply as well. So that's a very coarse weave fabric, and that's a very, very fine weave fabric. So whichever one you want to go to, I'm kind of partial to this one. But if I was doing a more, like if I was doing a Stone Age type thing, then I might use something like this. And also it depends on how much it's going to be tiled across the surface. I mean, if you're going to have this and you're going to tile it a bazillion times, then it might work. The only thing you've got to watch for is you'll start seeing patterns appear, moire patterns appear when you've got some really standout bands of dark and light values like we have here and down here. So, anywho, go ahead and be practicing that, and we'll move on to some more textures in just a little bit.